I'm honored to be here. I want to thank the creative writing department faculty, Brent Spencer, Susan Easterberg, David Philip, Great Funny for hosting me. I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be on campus. I moved to Omaha 6 years ago, and it's a thrill to be at Creighton. This is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Okay, thank you for dinner. That was a delicious dinner. I think I'm going to start with a prose poem. Flaming Arrow. The desert is space. Heat is time. The desert is empty. Heat is boredom's garden. A black box theater for the progress of the world. Or a chain around the necks of children. Otherwise, they lose the house key again. Television hums in the family room of humming fans. Heat, their textbook says, is kinetic. The house fills with headless action figure torsos, insects on pins, spent matches. To look for the desert, look no further than the yellow grass on the banks of the ornamental lake. Fire's path across the sky, the compound bow, gasoline, the rags from the garage, and the geese around the ornamental lake. The stage is set. Traffic passes and sees the children gathered on the shore, but no one stops it. It won't work at first. The arrow won't stay lit, and the geese move. Heat is the future. When it works, the children scatter. The desert is the future. Fill it with what you want. Today I was talking a little bit about ruined places, diminished places, austere places. I'm interested I'm from Phoenix and I write about arid environments, but I'm very interested in places that are deemed wastes or places that are misunderstood. I return to some of the images I have from my childhood of heavily air-conditioned environments and extreme heat, cul-de-sacs, and the boredom and cruelty of children. I had a playmate who no one else wanted to play with. A kid, a pecking order of mean kids in middle school. I was next to last, and my friend Jason was last. And we were bored, and we had nothing to do, and we blow things up and light things on fire and all the things that kids did. I'm a little bit like, my childhood was a little bit like Beavis and Butthead. I was both Beavis and Butthead. And poor Jason, we got his kite caught up in these power lines. And I knew it was dangerous. And I knew that I could convince him to go up there. And so I made him go up there. And I think about that moment. And he was fine. Nothing happened. Things could have happened. But he was a overweight kid, and the sun was going down, and he climbed up to these power lines to get this kite that got caught up there. That memory still in my mind of that moment of decision, like this is a bad idea. And you're just quiet, and you're watching your friend at night climbing up this huge tall power line to get this kite. This poem's about that. It's called The Kite, the Wires. How far can you walk away and still see the boy on the pole rising above your neighborhood? After stepping behind an outermost grove, then backpedaling, porch steps, hiding behind your mother reading, looking over her shoulder, wondering if his face, growing smaller in the window, will change as you pull away. This bullied boy, whose mouth you make out moving in what? In pain? In awe? Can he look into your house and still see you not sleeping? You who put him there, drawing away as from all accidental fires. For he is not the one who is lonely, nor has he forgotten the ruse you used to coax him into the wires after the silk tail which is swaying bedtime air. Nor is he trying to get down, as if he wanted to keep company the dragon he had climbed into electricity to save, which belongs to live wires to your seeing how far you can retreat and never lose him, never run out of what you would not do to take him down. Yet you open more distance, more straining eyesight, to catch a glimpse where lost dinner-time sky's lavender still holds him in your sight, where he waits no longer stranded, for you to pull this morning's curtain and to still want him there. Oh, Jason, wherever you are, you're doing all right. He tried to burn an anthill in his backyard, and the whole backyard went up in flames. Burn the queen. So, you know, in your 5th grade, you're bored. I wish I had a poem about that. I don't know a poem. I'm telling you a story about it. But yeah, so the fire, the backyard caught on fire, and I just ran. In your 5th grade. Help your buddy out? No, just run. I am the shadow. It's better human being. And your professors hired me to come and read to you. I'm going to keep the mood involving lofty, troubling things in the sky. I did a reading where I taught high school, and I've never seen a dead raven, a naturally dead raven. I've seen them when they're shot, but I don't know where they go to die. You don't see like a raven dead in front of a dumpster or something. And there were tons and tons of these big, giant, beautiful ravens in this town up on this mesa. If people have seen a dead raven that hasn't been shot or something, let me know, or hit by a car. But there was this raven that was dead in the crook of a tree. It was the weirdest thing in front of this trailer. I was walking around in between things I had to do. The town consists of these trailers on this mesa, and in the crotch of this tree is this living raven. So I have no idea what that was. And the weird thing about it was the people in the English department were talking about it all the time. And I overheard the way they were talking about this dead bird. And no one wanted to say it. Would you see it? Yeah, it's amazing. So all this talks about this dead bird, but no one's actually saying, did you see the dead raven? Instead they're saying, yeah, you don't see those, their language about it. They're talking around this issue. So I kind of used some of the language I overheard, and I wrote a poem about this moment. It's called Portents Aside. You know, a portent is something portentous, is maybe something foreboding. Portents aside. Of those who've seen its tree, of those saying cradled, who prefers caught? And who thought at first wind-blown sack or flag shadow, so close to the school? And of those praying this weather might, by way of high pressure or dust, spare our children, who looks to their cruelty, though the crotch of the tree is too high for them? And so having had its tree at your back, for whom did it rise again? And if it did rise again, say while driving away only to have it there in the windshield, who turned around to keep it behind them? Of those preferring crux, who sees a natural order? And who finds it easier to push it aside and keep driving? And who expected something much worse, some event more spectacular, to make the town feel so small? And since they are plentiful, common, the Peterson's Guide tells us, who has ever found one like it? And who cared for them alive? Who cared for them alive? Or, my page stuck together, or marveled at their design until now? And who blames the boy, or the stone? And of those blaming the boy, who calls it sister? And who blames the absence of a father who hunts? And of those who exonerate the boy, who points to the presence of a father who doesn't hunt, who, like the mother, must defend the boy? And who blames the heir? And of those secretly praising the aim, who hopes to polish the skull as a keepsake for such a trifle that towns worry over, bauble that our talk moves through? Even now, it could be in some keeper's hand. So among the sayers of crotch or crux, who will climb the tree? Who waits for it to fall? It's strange to hear people talk about it obliquely. I talked today, this afternoon, about living in a diminished condition. And I don't know, people here have lived in bad apartments. Who's lived in a crummy apartment? Good, thank you. You people live in crummy apartments. They're great subjects for poetry and writing. I lived in this bad, it was actually a house that we rented. And the door had been kicked through so many times, and you could tell that where the deadbolt had kind of traveled and been patched, up and down the door. And the guy, the lock wasn't working, so the maintenance guy for the property managers came to fix the lock. And as he's working, he kind of smelled like he'd been drinking a little bit, and he was working on the door. And he started talking about the damage of this door and how many times it had been kicked through. And I'm like, keep talking. He's writing these things down, and I get the last line of this poem from him, and the subject of this poem. Because I think doors and damaged doorways tell stories. They're interesting. They have traces of the kind of violence and circumstances that they once had. There's also a quote in this poem by Emily Dickinson, you'll recognize it, and Francis Bacon. Not the creepy painter, the other Francis Bacon. Wonderful painter. Key. Consider from the door what you want protected. A country where the bolt holds its ground, and wood gives way to be patched along the lintel. Threshold, where lifetimes are sifted on either side and blow away. Where are they? Just a door ajar that oceans are, you read. Yet the lock works in terms of one and many. Bits of broken glass in their wake, an auger's tongue, speaking the faces in wood grain. It's me, open the door. Pollen in the groves dispatched in moonlight, stenciled dabs of bats and whippoorwills. When you think it's safe to open the door, see earth auger. On either side, there are the last-ditch efforts in the inclement that your children become. Beneath the wheel that's never oiled, a screamer on the bridge, the keyhole, and its ticking lock. Are you bound to re-lose what you've lost? As if the key may at pleasure join that which nature hath severed. Burnished catalyst, second thinker, more than teeth. What couples tenderly is me, fibs the key. You can tell from the scarred sill, this house is not as old as you thought. And on either side, you know each other well. I just thought it was kind of haunting to have the idea that there's all this violence that had happened to this door. And this guy was telling me on either side, they know the parties know each other well. So that creeped me out. All right. How's everybody doing? It's Monday night. Get a poetry reading. I'm interested in limbo states, times when you're not where you're supposed to be, or you're between where you want to be. Places, you see them when you travel. You see them in like remote train stations or bus stations, places that are neither here nor there. I think when we find ourselves in those in-between states, it's an interesting, psychologically, it's an interesting state to be in. This is a persona poem. A character is speaking, and he's in such a state. He doesn't know where he should be. I think it's a he. I'm grateful it's not me. The poem's called There Was This Place I Wanted to Live. The character has a funny way of talking. There was this place I wanted to live. The balcony, the little chairs and table with plastic chrysanthemum, the window blinds mellow and from another time. I imagined a healthy fern inside there where someone would press a wet washcloth against my forehead when I didn't think I needed it, and they'd tell me, you need this. And when I try to thank them, shh, this kind person would say. It was that kind of place. You've seen it. The narrow French doors, the balcony peeking over a wall of oleanders. From my booth at Denny's, I watched it. It was hard to resist the dream of trespass then, when home thinks you're at work, and work thinks you're at home. All the while, the balcony kept whispering Marrakesh to me. A man could smoke something elaborate beside a dish of olives up there. So late at night, I left my carafe of decaf and waffle, and passed the parking garage and climbed its metal fence in the hedge, hefting myself over the balcony to look inside the French doors. And there was a snack machine and some glossy brochures in a rack, and I knew anyone driving by would see me up there. I didn't have much time. Then a woman in a bathing suit came down a hallway, and a man in a robe stepped out from a door. It was a tanning salon. I've been looking at the back of the tanning salon. I wasn't up there long for fear a spotlight would be on me. So I climbed back down and tried to retrace my steps. The parking garage was dark with its few cars, and I felt like it was the day after the apocalypse was supposed to happen. A kind of shame. At intervals, light fixtures in rows reached back until you couldn't see them. I went back to my breakfast, which had been cleared away, and there were strangers at my table. "Do you want your check?" the assistant manager asked me, and I said I was sorry, that I had left something in my car, and that I was ready to settle up. And he laughed and said he knew I was good for it, and that I'd be back. He knew where to find me. Do people know what an eclogue is? Remember, it's a poem that has multiple voices. And traditionally, I think an eclogue involves a conversation of shepherds in a field, and they extol the virtues of I don't know, sheep. And usually it's thinly veiled. They talk about other things. They talk about philosophy. They talk about erotic love. They talk about sheep. They talk about all kinds of stuff. The shepherds, and they're smart, but they also they praise the country and its bounty, the countryside and its bounty. So I'm interested in that, and I wanted to write an eclogue that's an American eclogue. So where can you get multiple voices talking about the bounty of our country? The mini-mart, right? It's the first place that you thought too. So this is an eclogue that has multiple voices. You're going to hear voices by one voice will speak a lot. He's the person in a mini-mart buying something. And then there's the checker, the person at the counter who's going to help this person. So this poem's called Eclogue. I wiped the screen with the wipe, watched nachos turn and melt in the greasy window, then asked the man at the counter if Corona Light came in packs bigger than 12 in the walk-in cooler. You mean the beer cave? I doubt it, but you can look. Gotta help the people behind you. They wanted lotto tickets and smokes. I'll meet you in there. I pushed through the door of the walk-in and heard a rustling in dust, like mice in grain. And towering inside the beer cave was the equestrian statue of King Philip III of Spain. It was in my way. Powder and bone sprigs inside the bronze steed and monarch stirred with the thrashing of something tired and nimble. It was hard to squeeze around its forelegs to look for corona cases, which are a much better deal than the 12ers. I succumbed to the temptation to stop and admire the horse and rider, which really should be punctuating the center of Plaza Mayor in Madrid, but was now in the walk-in cooler of the Circle K on Cave Creek and Peoria Road in Phoenix. But what was that sound? The twitches of an insect trapped in the inner ear? Once my friend John was waiting for his table at the Red Lobster when something flew in his ear, and we had to go to the emergency room where they pulled out a cricket inside a grown man's ear. Crickets don't fly, said the ER doctor. Must have been in his hair. A little passenger, said the nurse. I plugged and unplugged my ears. Then I figured it out. When Giovanni de Bologna and Pietro Taccia crafted their statue in 1616, the horse's teeth were slightly parted around the monarch's bit. For the sculpted horse loved its rider, loved its master's bridle, its metal bar, and loved the decree rolled up in his hand instead of a sword. And so it was, Bologna and Taccia, by employing the lost wax method, opened the teeth of the metal horse at mid-piaffe, bringing the stallion's muzzle toward his broad chest, creating a lifelike aperture in the bronze statue. But swifts, exhausted from their trans-hemispheric migration, took the statue for a nesting nook, as they do gutters or roof tiles. Once past the teeth, the birds found the accommodations of the hollow horse head spacious and tumbled into its belly. What was it like to be a swift? How generations of trapped birds once heard the flute and ankle bells of buskers and fire-eaters, the Inquisition spectacle in the plaza. These few remaining birds would now hear people buying boxes of Michelob Ultra. Consider the horse's cadenced trot frozen in place. a perennially unoccupied space for the starvation of swifts until now. Think of the thousands of miles from the tip of Africa to Plaza Mayor, how they could sleep in mid-flight, change their body temperature during storms crossing the Mediterranean. A new loneliness crept into my bones as the clerk finally joined me. Any luck? No, but nice statue. Pretty cool, eh? We just put that in here for the Super Bowl. It's from Spain, I know. Are those birds? Yeah, they said they'd quiet down. I bet you didn't expect to see this in here. No, I really didn't. It's okay, no one does. American Eclogue. I love mini marts. I've been writing a lot about mini marts. I've had a lot of bad experiences, and I try to put as many of them in poems as possible. And I had a really bad haircut. I don't know if people have had a bad haircut in here. But this didn't quite happen to me to the extreme that I mentioned it in this poem. But I had a woman, while cutting my hair, I had these lamb chops, and I had a woman, every time I go to her chair and get a haircut, each time she got sadder and sadder. So every month or so, I'd come and get my lamb chops cut and kind of the stuff around here. And she talked about her husband needing time away, needing to go back to New Jersey to kind of find himself. And so you can kind of see this. So finally, it happened. She had her nervous breakdown, but I was in the chair. And I remember she sobbed, and she had the little razor going, and she sobbed, and she, like that, and I saw my part of my ponytail just hit the floor right there. And I looked at that, and then I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she didn't turn off the razor, and she started crying more, and then laughing hysterically. And the weird thing was, there were the dryers, the bank of the dryers. This is a long time ago when they had the dryers, people were under the dryers, and women with foil in their hairs and stuff, they were up against the wall, and there's nothing they could do, there's nothing anyone could do to put my hair back on my head. And they just kind of looked at me. And I felt like, like you make a sound with a field of cattle, and they all turn at you. The whole boutique just looked at me with my hair on the floor. And I just got up and took off the smock, handed it to her, and walked out of there, and it's horrible. I had one chop short, one chop long, and went about my day. So I took that experience. The poem is greatly inferior to that story that I just told you, so I want to make sure I entertain you between the poems. But this is called Grooming, and it came out of that experience. Well into the hairdresser's nervous breakdown, she snapped the smock around my neck, and in locks and curls the hair, more hair than I had grown in many lifetimes, fell onto the tiles. And I grew thin in the oily hum of the clippers, in the perfume of tattooed Carlotta. The salon lights cut in and out, but the razor went on. And I had my hair cut into the dawn, the small engine in her hand smoking, and she was laughing, like a sheep, she kept saying to me, and didn't stop for a smoke break. Generations of aunties slinked out from beneath their dryer eggs. Women with strips of foil still in their hair gave me a worried look, then walked to their sedans. No one rescued me. I looked for myself in the streetlights reflected in the mirrors of the abandoned bays. Almost done, she said. But the razor went against the grain of me, and the dome of my head bobbled in her grip as I resisted sleep. And before I knew it, she held a small mirror before me. And there was a stranger inside it, vaguely resembling a man nowhere even close to being done. Haven't gone back to a barber since then. Okay. I give an assignment to my classes about an object. I think it's a common assignment in creative writing. You can find an object that can allow you to talk about another subject. And ideally, you want to find an object that has, that gets you thinking about, and this is a prompt that I give in a creative nonfiction workshop, where you find an object allows you to get to your past, and it may be vehicle by which you can travel back in time and kind of reflect on what's happened in the past. So this kind of came out of that assignment, and it was something I'd forgotten entirely about concerning my grandfather. And I don't know if this is a poem or an essay. We can talk about this in the Q&A. I don't know the difference sometimes. It's not in line breaks, but it's in short prose sections. And it may be a micro-essay. It may be a prose poem sequence. I don't know. But it's true, if that's any consolation. It doesn't mean anything, but you know, the last poem, Grooming, was kind of an exaggeration. There's not an exaggeration here. Okay, it's called Derringer. You know what a Derringer is, right? It's not that great guitar player in the 80s. It's the small little pistol. Derringer. My grandfather puts down his beer and unwraps the oily red rag around a rim-fired, breech-loading, single-action Derringer. As his thumbnail slides across the Derringer's grip, he calls it polished bone. Sometimes he calls it pearl, or mother pearl. He tells me that it killed the president, that the Derringer has the slowest bullet ever, then he hands it to me. But on one side of the Derringer, centered on the grip panel, as if in a cameo brooch of yellowing resin, there floats the smallest scorpion I have ever seen. The kind that kills toddlers and the infirm, that killed the little dog named Bosley who slept under a snarl of hedges. Turn the Derringer over, and there's a second scorpion. And they're real, for one stinger is curved, the other straight. In front of adults drinking adult beverages, I point the Derringer at the window, dry fire it, then turn the barrel on myself. The Derringer fits perfectly in a child's hand. Hold it up, and the pale legs and stinger, suspended in its grip, glow against lamplight. I am on both sides the Derringer. My heart is beating, and there's no one to stop me. Give Granddaddy back his gun. It's time for bed. All night, scorpions scurry in my sheets. My grandfather quits jobs when he gets them. Takes his time coming home when he quits. Too small for a holster, the Derringer can be mounted on a silver belt buckle with polished turquoise and coral. And he wears it when we go to county line liquor stores and at the dock where he lowers a crab pot into oily water by the refinery. He wears it when he mows the lawn. Once, in a parking lot, the Derringer falls from its buckle, shattering a side panel from its grip. This is before he loses Inez, before strange men gather around his riding mower and easy chair, before he dumps the contents of his wallet, then the wallet, then his clothes 2 stories down onto the gravel and hibiscus outside his window. He writes poems about Jesus paying his bills in heaven's grocery store. He tells me he had to fire the Derringer to shoot the lip off a water moccasin. In a storage unit, a lifetime later, I find the Derringer. Through the empty frame of its grip, there's the cardboard bottom of a box, the smell of rat killer. The breech-loading latch is flimsy. The snub barrel wobbles on a wiry hinge when I look inside it. It never had a firing pin. I miss the exit home again and keep driving long after dark. There's a phone ringing in my coat. Why do you do this to yourself? Why are you doing this to me? And as I try to answer you, I can feel his hands unwrapping the oily red cloth, his fingernail pointing into the kitchen late at night, tracing the path of a bullet I can still see in mid-flight. So what are people going to do when they graduate? The new economy. This poem's called In the New Economy. I'm trying to answer that question. What are we all going to do in the future? Things are looking better maybe right now, but lately it's felt the economy's been kind of bleak, and I wonder what kind of future we're all going to have. So I wanted to write a poem about that fear. And I try to write towards a fear sometimes, and interesting things can happen when you do that. I had that advice from one of my teachers in grad school. Says, I was stuck. And she goes, try writing towards a fear. So I did that, and this poem's called In the New Economy. I'm going to read two more poems. This poem, one more, and I'll stop. This is called In the New Economy. In the new economy, you must skin the bear cub in the rain. But you lied about your credentials and don't know how. It hangs upside down from a tree within eyeshot of the lodge, so men who own Taco Bells in Lubbock can see your handiwork. The manager who helps you hoist the animal on Calvary says, thank God, they fly out tomorrow. They're not paying us by the week to drink bourbon in the sniper's tower. You tell yourself the bear, no bigger than a 5th grader, is no more like us than a dog. But water drips from your parka onto the dusty fur, and at its head there's a bright yellow bucket with rope handles you bathe the dog in. Pine needles stick to its muzzle. So you break the rules and leave your post, track boot prints across the tiles to use the off-limits guest bathroom in the lodge, where in a dish by the sink there's a pile of rose hips. Rosa rugosa, you say to no one. And, Rosa, you say it to yourself in the mirror, and don't know why you can name the sharp metal crowns, the petals curling into tines, regions where masculine and feminine blur and fall away. But you won't be seduced by analogy. A taco mogul's bear won't skin itself, and what they pay you for still swings in the rain. 2 of them that day lumbered from the trees, baited with kitchen grease, grocery store chuck, red dye turning blue beneath the flies. The men are louder beside the fire. It just sat down dead, he says. I squeezed the trigger, and it sat right down. Later tonight, you'll fry them chicken, lift them dumplings from the broth. The mother is still out there bleeding. They botched the shot. Tell yourself, the abattoirs of the world are humming without you. It'll be like pulling a shirt the bear wore its whole life over its head. It's nothing. You can do this. That won't happen to us. We won't be skinning bears in the rain. It's my last poem, and it's set in the desert. It's a subject very dear to me. The poem's called Scat. You know what scat is? Not the singing. Poop. You know, like wild animal poop. So this will, I think what, it's one big sentence. And what should you know about this? Oh, one detail. Turkey vultures, you have them here. They're awesome. You don't like turkey vultures? You're shaking your head?
They're in my neighborhood.
They're in your neighborhood?
They just attack you. They're awful.
Turkey vultures attack you?
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen a turkey vulture attack. I've known them if you go near their nests, they can puke on you. But I've never known them to, I've never known them to attack. I mean, Brett has a wonderful moment with a tug of war with a turkey vulture. But attacking, that's
a Texas turkey vulture.
Yeah, they make them big out there. Texas toast-sized turkey vulture. Well, these are Arizona. These are benign turkey vultures. They're friendly. They're just scared of gated communities and want to live in peace. So it's scat. A spire, a chimney, or a pena, the rock finger of decomposing granite in the hieroglyphic mountains had split, so that back to boot sole we shimmied bloody-kneed up its cleft, its only approach, thinking of all that lives in the divots and handholds we blindly grabbed at, the venomous, the territorial, most likely the nests of cactus wrens piled with cholla and catclaw acacia, or if we were unlucky, the nests of a turkey vulture, Cathartis ara, who'd vomit gore on our trespassing faces, whose 6-foot wingspan would still spook us off the side of the rock. And if one of us did fall, our minds retraced the washed-out road's faint ruts that disappeared altogether, or were stocked with camphorweed or thistles, the road that snuffed out like a wick at a steep crest where the truck bottomed out and had to be put in 4-low. The road that brought us here was probably an arroyo to begin with, one that we were never meant to follow in daylight, much less at dusk, for the road didn't have a number or designation on the map. And as we climbed the rock, we told ourselves that if one of us fell and lived, we wouldn't move the body. for the spinal injuries, but we drive to get help. But beyond this rock outcropping and saying it's somewhere near Constellation, Arizona, which is a ghost town, we would be hard-pressed to say where we were, so we were careful, and congratulated ourselves as we got closer to the top, where we'd have a view of the valley, the soft hills to the west, whose saguaros and ocotillos would shimmer gold at first before turning to cobalt at sunset, before we started back down again in the last light. But as we both crested the top, we didn't notice the view. We looked down at our boots, where a four-legged, half-starved coyote once took it upon itself to shit a wizened, pebbly cairn of seeds, prickly pear thorns, and rodent fur, which said to us, for you, before you, after you, and in spite of you, you with all of your questions, for what riddle is this your answer? Thank you. Want me to answer questions? I can answer questions here.
Can I ask a question? And I'm not sure how to phrase this, but I've heard you read a couple of times now, and it seems to me you have at least two strains in poetry. And one strain is a kind of a narrative quality. Even if there's something strange, like the sculpture in the minibar, there's still a kind of clear narrative, sort of something interesting happening, like the last poem too. And then you have a kind of poetry that I think Robert Bly used to call leaping poetry, where there's a sort of very nimble quality that the poems are built, not so much on narrative, though it's there, but on that kind of nimble leaping from image to image. And the images aren't necessarily logically connected, but you feel the connection beyond logic. Am I saying this? Are you aware of this? Am I wrong? Is this conscious? How do you know when the poem starts it's going to be one kind of poem or the other?
It's a struggle, because sometimes I think that the leaping poetry, first of all, yes, absolutely. The leaping poetry, I still want to tell stories sometimes, and sometimes I want the poem to develop, not so it has to have a narrative arc. I want the poem to kind of grow heuristically, like it listens to itself, and moves from an echo, and it moves from a concept or a mood, and it develops less narratively. And it's sometimes I feel like I'm going to be doing one when I'm doing the other, and I don't know. It's a hard time, I think. It's a wonderful time to be a reader of poetry and to write poetry, but it is a challenging time because there is sometimes the pressure to be one or the other, to kind of be outside in the non-narrative and non-lyrical, non-self, I don't know how to describe it, non-empirical, not making reference to an empirical speaker or self, or I don't know what the fancy word to talk about that is, but or there's this impulse to want to write a story that seems to come from a central voice telling her his tale. It's a struggle. I do both, but I don't. When I wake up in the wee hours in the morning to go to work and to write, I don't know what's going to happen. One gives me a reprieve from the other, so I can do one and I can enjoy it, and then I do the other and I can enjoy it. I found I get overloaded by either one when I do either one too much. I feel too folksy with the narratives, and I feel too much like a wacko with the weird stuff. I'm like wacko most of the time, actually.
Okay, so I have a question about your sort of editing that you do of your own poetry, because I'm just sort of learning how to edit my poetry. And how many times would you say that you go back and edit a poem, and how long do you sort of give yourself in between when you write it and when you edit it?
The short of it is it varies, but it takes a really, really long time. And the poems change radically, and they move their histories where they can start in a narrative vein and turn into something more elliptical or more abstract, if you will, or whatever, and the other way around. They start abstract and turn into a story. And I am so grateful I am not a furniture maker. I would have in my household unmade things everywhere. I'm just glad it's all on a hard drive or in boxes or piles of papers by my desk, because a lot of things don't get finished and it bothers me. Or things, and I try working, and there are things that I've worked on and labored on so hard and revised and revised and revised, and they just, the suckers just can't get off the ground. They just don't work. They just can't catch fire. I don't know. I don't know. So it depends. In the revision process, it's redemption because you can always another crack at it, and it's also makes me crazy because it never ends. And I think some of this may come from I wish I had the confidence to feel as though I'm going to write these poems and they're going to go in this book and people are going to read them, and there are these nice smart people at Creighton that are going to read the book and talk to me about the book, and that I can think about moments like this that will help me want to revise the poems and get them done. But when it comes time to just me by myself at my desk sometimes, I move them in and out of modes and mess with them and move in one direction, and I just don't stop messing with them. I'm getting better, I think. I had a really bad spell after my first book. I just couldn't finish anything. That's not very inspiring. That's the truth. It takes a long time. Big question. It's so nice when you edit and revise something and you finish it. Hey, look at that, it's done. That almost never happens quickly. It's months and months, or in some cases years.
Maybe we'll just let folks check out the books in the back, and I'm sure Miles will be happy to sign a copy for you, and you can, if you have any other questions, chat with him then, and thank you for an amazing reading. Really enjoyed it.